Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest webcast in Caring.com's Digital Marketing Academy. Our session today is about getting your business found by senior care searchers online. I'm Denise Grob, a marketing director here at Caring.com, and our featured expert today is Kent Lewis of Anvil Media, who I'll introduce momentarily. One moment, please. I'll advance the slide. Thank you. Before we get started, I want to let you know this is a one-way webcast where only the presenters speak. You can ask questions in the upper right of your screen at any time during the session. We'll have a Q&A at the end, and we do our best to answer all questions, but should we miss yours, we will follow up with you afterward. A common question we get throughout the session is, will the presentation materials be available later? The answer is yes. We're going to send those to your inbox. First thing tomorrow morning, you'll get the recording, the slides, and a companion blog post. So we want you to stay focused and listen, and you don't have to worry about taking furious notes. We'd love your questions, and we will answer those toward the end. This webinar is free of charge, but you do have to listen to this brief commercial for Caring.com as a price of admission. We have 3 million visitors using our site Senior Care Resources every month. These are families and older adults who are turning to us for caregiving information, referral, and support. They also come to us for reviews about senior care providers. In fact, we are the largest senior care review site with about 150,000 consumer reviews on our site right now, and we add thousands every month. We also have thousands of original articles across caregiving and elder care topics, and we host dozens of online support groups. Caring.com is owned by Bankrate, and we are part of a powerful network of websites dedicated to supporting people in making complex financial decisions. Our featured speaker today is Kent Lewis of Anvil Media. With a background in integrated marketing, Lewis left a public relations agency in 1996 to start his career in search engine marketing. Since then, he's helped grow businesses by connecting his clients with their constituents via the internet. In 2000, he founded Anvil, an integrated marketing agency specializing in analytics, search engine, and social media marketing for growth-oriented companies. Under his leadership, Anvil has received recognition from the Portland Business Journal, Incorporated magazine as a fastest growing and most philanthropic company. Industry recognition and awards also include the 2012 Marketer of the Year by the American Marketing Association Oregon chapter. So we are really excited to have Kent Lewis here. I can't wait to have him share his expert insights with you. As usual, we have a lot to cover. We're going to start with helping you understand the local search landscape and the user experience in online search. Then we're going to explain how to optimize your local listings for search engines and online directories and how to stand out from others in your area. Then Kent will discuss the importance of review, monitoring, and management. We'll open it up for Q&A, and we have a few final announcements. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and give Kent the mouse so that he can share his excellent presentation with you. Kent, are you able to move that mouse?
Yes, I am. I believe so. Let's see.
Great.
Oh, look at it. There we go. All right. Thank you for, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for allowing me to share my insights. Thanks to Caring.com and all of you who have tuned in to talk about the local search landscape. And I want to start out by talking about what a local listing is and what it means for your business. Again, I assume, perhaps correctly, that most of you know what I'll be talking about, so I'm going to be focusing more on the nuanced ways to maximize the value of your time and your efforts for local search to generate those critical leads and inquiries at the local level for your residents. So local listings typically on Google, which is, a majority of searches with a local intent happen on Google. And so a local listing, which is very similar on Yahoo and Bing as well, is simply your company name, address, phone number, and then a few other attributes. So for example, this is a local search based in my hometown, Portland, Oregon. And what's really changed over the years with local search, particularly with Google, is that the search results used to be generated by how close they were to the center of the city in which you were searching from. So if I was 10 miles outside of Portland, I would still get the senior care or senior living center community that was the closest to the middle of downtown. And in those days, it was all about location, right? Like the old retail model, location, 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 the closest to downtown, the highest the rent, but it's worth it because you get among other things, higher rankings. The reality, though, is that's not the case. As of the last year or so, Google has changed its algorithm to focus on giving you the most relevant top 3 initial results based on where you're searching from and the 3 closest to your location. That is the primary ranking factor. So when I did a search, I'm relatively close into town, but you can see in most searches, it'll give you the distance from how close you are to those locations. And my business happens to be closest to 45th and Sandy, second closest to 30th and Stark, and distantly, Summer Place Assisted Living is at 157th, so that's way out there. There are others that are closer in, but they also didn't trap all the other signals that we'll talk about that get them in the magic top 3 positions in Google. Once I click through to say Laurelhurst Village, which I searched after hours, so it was closed at that time, you can see there are 2.9 stars out of 12 reviews. You can see the name, address, phone number, some photos, review summary, so you can see the distribution is a few likes, a lot of hates, and then a couple quotes that Google automates. So there's a lot going on in the local listings, and we'll break it down in a moment to talk about how you maximize those local listings. But right now it's what we call the 3-pack. And once you click on more places, you'll see an infinite number, depending on the size of your market, might go 20 or 30, or if you're in a small market, there might only be 2 or 3 more. But it's important to be in that top 3. That is the absolute goal when it comes to local search. And it's often easier said than done. So how are people using these local listings? For starters, it is the reputation economy. And we'll talk about in a little bit managing reviews in the second part of the presentation, is that people are reading reviews to gauge how credible a business is. They obviously, if they're any sort of sense of interested in your business, they want directions, they want to grab a quick phone number, and they also want to maybe see some pictures, and then less so for senior care, pricing, accommodations, that sort of thing. So those are the main reasons that people are looking. Now, what's interesting is 20% of desktop searches have a local intent to the search. So if I search pizza on a desktop, 20% of the time, probably higher for a term like pizza, I'm looking for a pizza joint, not a pizza recipe or the history of pizza. In the senior care space, this would be a very accurate representation. 50% of mobile queries have a local intent. So half of searches that are done on mobile devices have a local intent. So almost 2.5 times more searches on mobile have that local intent, and you have to play in that game because because mobile dominates in search and usage these days. So this is a bit of a surprise to some of us. It was a surprise to me. Only 5% of those use a city or state with their search queries. So when they search for senior care facilities, they may be searching from Nashville, but only 5% will add Nashville, 2% using a specific neighborhood, and 0.5% bothering with a zip code. So if you optimize for the modifier like senior care facility, senior care community, senior living center, you add the city, the neighborhood, or the zip code in your optimization strategy, you'll cover 100% of the market. But 95% don't even bother putting in the city. There is an exception, and that is when you're searching for another city in which a loved one, customer, client, whomever lives, and you're researching the senior care opportunities in those markets that you don't currently reside in. those are also very important searches as well, as you have more and more of the Gen X are taking care and placing their parents in homes. This is a particularly important element to think of. So optimizing for city, state, neighborhood, zip code is really important. What does it mean to your business? If you're not doing that, you're obviously missing out on a good deal of potential traffic and future clients, right? Future residents. So interestingly, I've been in the world of search, as mentioned, for over 20 years. 50% of mobile searches are conducted in the hopes of finding a local result. 61% of those searches result in a purchase. Now, how many of them are buying a $6,000 a month living arrangement for the loved one? I have a 97-year-old great aunt who lives in a care center up in Washington State, $6,800 a month, and it's very basic care. They take good care of her, and that's considered, I'm guessing, almost mid-range. So this is a huge financial decision for people. So I wouldn't expect that 61% all would result in a purchase, but still a significant percentage of your lead volume will be coming from phone calls and inquiries generated from local searches. So it's absolutely essential to be part of that game. And what is the game? Well, it's pretty obvious. The top 3 engines that people are searching on: Google, Bing, and Yahoo. If you were an e-commerce brand and I was talking to you, I'd say Amazon is half of shopping searches go to Amazon, half go to Google. But when it comes to a healthcare, senior care decision, it's mostly happening on Google. Bing and Yahoo struggle to be relevant with less than 10% of the market combined. So still worthy of attention, but nowhere near as important as Google and some of the industry directories. So let's revisit what those profiles look like. So it took me a long time, believe it or not, to find one location, in this case a Brookdale property in Oswego Springs, in part of Lake Oswego, Oregon. I could only find one business. It took me, I was 5 down or more into the directory listings to find one that had a listing on all 3 of Google, Bing, and Yahoo. So Google is on the left, it looks familiar. I believe Yahoo's in the middle and Bing is on the right. So they're all listed, they're all very similar. And as we talk about the local landscape, it's all powered by the same 3 to 4 database providers, but you need to be talking to and communicating with all of the key vendors to make sure that the key elements of your listing are consistent across all businesses. So you can see there's a lot of similarities, but Google has the most advanced capabilities with far more photos, built-in reviews, and they all have name, address, phone number. Some offer integrated reviews from third parties. You can see caring.com, and some competitors are fed automatically into the Google reviews, not so much with Bing and Yahoo. So a lot to keep in mind as you map out your local search strategy. So here's an example of what the local search landscape looks like, which thankfully keeps us employed. So for instance, Google Local is at the center of the universe. They have their own Google Maps. They have everything powers Google Local. They take a feed from almost everybody. Okay, but there are a couple players that help feed the major databases. Moz Local is a great place to start because it feeds Infogroups database, Axiom, and Newstar Localese, which are 3 of the biggest databases. And on the other side of the world, you've got Factual, which is a major provider for Apple. And they've got Yext as well, which is a big player. So, and then UBL, Universal Business Listings, is another third-party provider that covers much of that universe as well. Moz covers probably the most, followed by Yext and then UBL if you're looking for one place. But if you want to cover them all, you got to get engaged with Factual. So all these websites have basically a annual management fee to you update your information once in their master directory, and it feeds all of these providers that then feed everything down to navigation systems on cars. So this is a massive integration that you have to keep in mind. Now, the other things to keep in mind that there are, as I mentioned, there are tools, and I mentioned Moz, I mentioned UBL, Whitespark and Bright Local are also 2 other providers that can manage your local listings effectively and make things a lot easier. So take a look at Moz Local, White Spark, and Bright Local, and you should be covered by any one of those. I also mentioned, of course, Yext and some others. So those are the providers to get your general information fed properly and accurately. But to make them stand out, there are a few tricks you need to keep in mind. So for starters, let's talk about what the main ranking factors are. And these change a little bit year to year, but not a whole lot. So interestingly, these are, a lot of Moz does its own expert roundup to say, in terms of local SEO experts, what do they believe are the top ranking factors? Because Google will never tell you, Yelp will never tell you, Yext and others. But generally, the one that I see that is occasionally erroneous is that residences, facilities are not in the proper category. In this case, it could be home health care service is one of the most common. Home instead senior care is in that category, but there may be 2 to 3 other categories that might fit your facility depending on the level of care you provide. So making sure you're in the proper category, typically you want to be where your competitors are versus where they're not. That could be tricky if you're not in the right spot. And then you've got the physical address. You have to be in that city or within a certain proximity of the searcher in order to show up. So in Portland, there are suburbs like Beaverton and Gresham. And if you are trying to rank for Portland when you're out in Gresham, 10 miles away, you're not going to. It's just not possible. So the best bet is to optimize for the area within a certain radius of your business and call it good there. Consistency of structured citations means there's something called schema markup that you can use to tell Google and every search engine that this is my company name, facility name, this is my name, this is my address, and this is my phone number. These are hours of operation, etc. So there's some coding. You can go to schema.org to find out more about what structured citations can do. There's something called H-cards as well that you can use in your footers of your website so that you can tell Google ostensibly the same thing. These are the names and address and phone number of my business so that they know what those 5 digits mean, that are a zip code and not something else. The 5th criteria, HTML, name, address, phone number matching the place page. So what that means is on your website, if you have a location page for multiple properties, each page, best practice in SEO is every location you own should have a dedicated landing page with name, address, phone number, other elements like key services and amenities and all of that. You don't want to put them on a single scrolling page because Google does not like that. They want to show you, they want to see that you are dedicated to that business and committed. As far as building a page for that location goes, that's one way to do it. So they want to make sure the name, address, phone number on the page on your website matches what they have in their directory. There's the quantity and quality as well of the structured citation. So not just the quality, but the quantity, the number of places that are mentioning home instead senior care around the internet, giving them more votes or validation. The domain authority of your website simply means of all the websites out there, there's a kind of a 0 to 100 scale of how credible your site is, with Amazon being a 1, number 1 most trusted, and a brand new site coming out of nowhere for a brand new facility might be, there would be 100 domain authority, whereas a brand new site might be 0 or 1. Anything in the domain authority above 40 is good. It's hard for individual properties to own that kind of visibility or domain authority. It takes a lot of link development over time, but that feeds into the local listing results in the algorithm. Owner verified listing is important, so that your Google My Business page has been claimed and verified, and you know you've been verified when on your listing it says, are you the business owner? That means that you have not been verified and you absolutely must do that. And then there's the city state, and in your Google My Business page title, you have to have all the proper identifiers and location. And then originally what's changed the most is proximity of address to centroid. That's a default if I'm searching out of market. But generally speaking, if I'm searching in market, it's going to give me the results closest to my location based on IP address, GPS, or whatever modifier. So those are the top 10 factors that help you determine your optimization strategy, and you have to address all of those 10. But basically it starts by claiming the listings. Usually a postcard or a 4-digit code is provided over the phone call, and then you enter that in and you can start updating your listing. You optimize it with all the right keywords, consistent name, address, phone number, and then monitor your listing, providing updates, new photos, promotions, etc. But mainly monitoring the reviews, which we'll talk about separately. The number one factor is name, address, phone number. Once you've claimed your listing, having consistency is absolutely key. And you ask yourself, well, our business name doesn't change. Our address has always been the same, and certainly our phone number doesn't change. Well, guess what? That's true technically, but Google's looking at all the nuances. So for instance, you have to have, in my case, anvilmediacom.inc.com is my official state of Oregon tax ID. Is that at a name. From an industry standpoint, I drop the Inc. Everybody, in marketing to an organization like Caring or Smash, albeit Smash in Chicago, it's just Anvil Media because Anvil's too generic. And if you're in Portland and you're talking digital agencies, you just need Anvil. So from a branding standpoint, we might use Anvil or maybe Anvil Media. But when it comes to local SEO, we have to use the full legal name in order to be relevant. That is important. So make sure that your name, address, phone number, that the commas, the periods, failing street versus ST versus STE for suite, that the 97212, all your zip code, that's the easy part. It's the name and how you spell your address that's the key. So when you're building those links, you keep that in mind, but then there's the standing out. So there's a couple ways to do that. One is by having star ratings when others don't. The other is by having the highest star ratings of your competition. And the third is to buying ads in the local listings. And there really are only a few others, like, are you open, right? So you can see in this example that Royalton Place is buying an ad, as is Russville Park. And so they would not come up in the top 3. So they show up in the promoted premium listings that you can buy through Google My Business to own that position, putting you above the rest. The next most common criteria is the number of stars, and not often does everybody look at the number of reviews. They just glance, oh, 5 stars, I'm in, or in this case, 4.9 for Home Instead. That's a very high ranking. They only have 7 reviews. That's not critical mass, but it's not far off of the highest number of views, which is 12. So they're doing pretty good there. But then you look at Home Instead Senior Care in Vancouver, and they have, versus the Sandy location in Portland, they have no reviews. So they're going to get left in the dust. Why they're ranking at all being in Vancouver is a little surprising, because that's all across the river in a different state. It's not far as the crow flies, but it's still in a different state. So all of this is really important to keep in mind, is that you have reviews, they're positive reviews, and that you're ideally open good hours. So you can see open 24 hours is a good key differentiator from those that say close today. So if I'm searching after hours and these guys don't seem as committed, even though they all have some sort of 24-hour service, most likely, they just put in their hours more conservatively when they don't want people to call. But open 24 hours is certainly a differentiator if you can pull it off. So those are a couple ways to stand out. Photos are important. Photos of the property. What you don't see enough of is photos of the people. So for instance, you look at Laurelhurst Village, what stands out is 2.9 stars, not good enough. You need 4 or higher to be credible. Ideally not higher than a 4.9, because a 5-star out of 5 with more than 1 review is not credible. Less than, say, 50 reviews. It's just hard to believe. You do want, if you can, to be open 24 hours. You can see here that there are some pull-out quotes on the Laurelhurst Village. And what I'm missing here is the people. It's just some old shots, some new shots, random leaves. So I would probably clean up those images to be more representative, both internal and external shots of the facilities and the people. I think would be very effective. On the right side, you have the adult placement network, and look at this Google Maps street view. It's a house. Nothing says credibility more than a house blocked by a tree. So I would not, they consider this a retirement community. I consider it my grandmother's house, not as credible. Notice the business listing has not been claimed. It says own this business. So that's a problem. So this person or people at the adult placement network need to click on that and follow the instructions to claim the listing. They need to solicit reviews and update the photo. If they don't want people to see the house, they need to show an interior or the type of people they serve to de-emphasize the fact that they're look to be working out of a house. So those are just some of the factors. There are a couple others. So make sure that on your website you've optimized your listing. So when you go to the Laurelhurst Village website, you see the name, address, phone number, get directions, view map. Make sure that from an SEO, search engine optimization standpoint, you're following best practices. So include your facility or location name in the title tag for that property dedicated page, that it's in the meta description. At Laurelhurst Village, we specialize in, and then in the header tag, H1 tag, that's the headline tag, that the name of the location is there. Building it into the body copy, the URL itself. So Senior Care Centers / Laurelhurst Village is an ideal URL from an SEO standpoint. Everybody in this industry has a different approach to how they separate out the properties. Many that have gone over the years through acquisition have a bunch of dedicated separate websites. Best practice from an SEO standpoint, from a branding strategy, is all properties are on one domain with subdirectories / name of facility and dedicated pages with content, but you can channel all that energy to one primary brand and one domain. That's the way to maximize the best SEO and organic visibility in search. It also helps your local search. Then there's schema markup. So I mentioned this briefly earlier. This is an example of the actual schema markup. So these are span tags. So schema says with the command postal address, you're giving name, city, state, and zip, and Google knows exactly what those are. You can give the geo coordinates, so a GPS can locate you somewhere in the planet, the telephone number, all of that shows up. So you can see in the bottom left is our footer, and you can see that the address and phone number, the address and name all look like they're just hand coded in, but they're actually in schema markup, so that you can tell Google that this is what this information is. And then in some cases, schema markup can be used to promote events, movies, music. So not so much is relevant to senior care, senior living, as much as other big organizations that are in the entertainment space, ticketing, hotels, etc. So that's kind of where schema was invented, but it's certainly essential for local search. Now, we have to talk about the 800-pound gorilla specifically. So Google My Business, you can literally Google My Business, and you can follow the steps to understand how to claim your listing, agree to their terms of service, or go to your listing directly, type your business name. It says, are you the business owner? Click that and follow the directions. And it's fairly straightforward. It says confirm your business address, and you can mail a postcard, or you can request for a phone call. Be careful if you request a phone call. The Google auto dialer will call within 2 seconds the phone that they have record of that's in your listing. You better have somebody there ready to answer the phone and write down the 4-digit PIN so that you can then access, or wait a couple of days and get it verified by mail. So that's their process. It can take anywhere from 2 seconds to 2 to 3 days. Once you've claimed it, then you can start optimizing. So there's a new feature that's worthy of note, and it's this reviews from the web. What it does is brings user-generated content, UGC, from third-party sites around the world and around the internet, and then folds them in. And you saw in that listing that it pulled from caring.com and other similar sites into that Google listing. So it's part of what they call the knowledge panel, which relates to the knowledge graph, which you've probably seen when you search for culturally relevant popular searches. So you can see what it looks like. So it's really important to have a strong presence on sites like caring.com and managing those reviews, because they're showing up in Google My Business as part of their new upgrades to their local listings. So with that said, we've got about another 15 minutes to talk about review monitoring and management before we go to Q&A. So let's do that, because really, if you think about it, in the reputation economy, the key here is that reviews can make or break your business. Now, we know that in this space in particular, Yelp is one of the least trusted review sources for senior care, but I will preface that or preempt that by saying I am using a bunch of their statistics and related research that people have done on Yelp as a baseline to keep you in mind of not only the remnant power of Yelp, which I think is nearly like Glassdoor is basically extortion. People tend to write negative reviews, and then they tend to offer you services to mitigate those reviews. It seems wrong to me, but there's some great compelling research that shows that the quantity and quality of those reviews directly correlate with revenue. Now, one myth worth debunking, and Caring has been helpful and gracious in providing some of this information. Most reviews are positive. So you saw just from the research I've done anecdotally in this presentation, there was anywhere from 3 to 5 stars in the reviews. If it was a negative bias, the averages would be like 1 to 3 stars or 2 stars instead of 4 stars. So people generally 75 to 80% of reviews are positive. But my experience when I'm working with clients that are coming to me because they have a problem is it's a reverse bias. Most people tend to spend the time to write negative reviews versus positive reviews, so they come to us for that help. And I've found that there's a reason they come to me, and they're not cleaning up their business and their services and their people, their employees. And it's not senior care specifically, it's just businesses that have not tightened up their game and they're getting hammered online. So ways to deal with that. So caring.com has our partner listings. And of those providers that have 15 or more reviews, they get up to 8x more move-ins and 5 times more inquiries than listings with only 1 to 2 reviews. So quantity does matter, not just quality. And the quantity doesn't necessarily directly correlate to the visualization of the number of stars, but people actually read reviews. And it's funny, I think that we've all shopped on Amazon, and many of us read reviews, but we may only read the first 2 or sort them in some way and look at the worst or the best. But the idea is that in the decision on buying a flat screen TV from Amazon is a little bit less of a financial and emotional commitment than finding senior care for your mother or father, uncle or brother. So you're going to read every review. So having more reviews, and again, I propose that you don't want 100% 5-star perfect reviews. You want at least 1 or 2, that ideally 3 or 4, that makes it real and believable that you're not perfect, but you're pretty darn good and you're better than the competitors. Last point, Caring Star Award winners generate twice the inquiries and move-ins over a 2-year period. So gaining the credibility of earning a Star Award from Caring carries some weight in that trust element and social proof that is so powerful as a sales vehicle for generating qualified leads. So here are some of the stats from research conducted by and around Yelp that you can extrapolate, carries through across a bunch of other review sites, which we'll talk about in a minute. So the importance of online customer reviews. 90% of consumers read online reviews before visiting business. That is not Yelp specific at all. So 9/10 of people are reading those reviews. 88% of them trust reviews as much as personal recommendations. And we know that word of mouth and friends and family are still the primary drivers of most business. So it's right there, just a hair under asking your mom, dad, brother, or sister for a recommendation for a restaurant. You're actually going on the internet for other people instead of a restaurant. You're talking about senior care. It's a big decision. Who's actually been there and done that? Next up, 92%, over 90% will use a local business if it has at least a 4-star rating. So that's pretty straightforward. 4 stars or better is the goal. 3, you start to get into trouble potentially over time. 72%, or nearly 3/4, will take action only after reading a positive review. So having any positive reviews is absolutely essential. And then on average, a 1-star increase in a Yelp lead, and this is Yelp unique, but you could extrapolate this a bit to other review sites with a similar 5-star system, including Google. On average, 1-star increase on Yelp leads to a 5 to 9% increase in revenue. one negative review can cost you 30 customers. So again, aggregated across a ton of their research. You cannot, bottom line is it's pretty straightforward. You want to have as many 5-star reviews as possible, and every negative review you have is going to cost you customers. And you can run the math real quick and tell me what 30 customers is worth to you. And I'm guessing, and for many of you, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. Nearly 3/4 say that positive reviews make them more likely to trust a business, of course. And then 31% customers are likely to spend up to 31% more in a business with excellent reviews. So they spend more. So, that again seems to imply retail bias versus, senior care, senior housing, but that's still a factor worthy of note. So who are the players in the space? Obviously, Caring, our sponsor today, is one of the big players in the space. There are others like Senior Homes and A Place for Mom that they're gracious enough to even allow me to list. And then there's others that are more, circular out. Health Grove, there's Skilled Nurses Facilities, AssistedLiving.com, and I mentioned those. These all show up in search results. These are all primarily third-party facilitators of user-generated content, so reviews and ratings from customers, clients, residents. Now, there are a couple other players that I'm mentioning here. Obviously, Google, because it's a search engine, it's a local directory, and it has reviews. And of course, Facebook is a big player in the senior care space, more than other industries where people are looking at the reviews and conversations about on company pages on Facebook. And then there's the editorial side. So Best Nursing Homes by U.S. News and World Report. They're known for doing things on colleges, universities, other types of schools, senior living, hospitals. So that's a PR play, nominating yourself, submitting for those awards, making sure you have a compelling case to make as a top nursing home can do you very good for lead flow. It's a huge trust banner, trust mark to add to your marketing. But that's not generated by users, that's generated by third-party editorial, quote-unquote, experts that analyze the data. You need to play in all of these places: search engines, social media sites, healthcare sites, third-party publishers that are doing analysis. All of the above are critical to be playing in the space to secure listings as a directory or reviews. So, let's talk about reviews. Typically, the first time you're interacting with reviews, they're negative, because if they're positive, you pretty much are not even going as far as thanking people for writing positive reviews because, oh, it's already written, I'm done. So most of the time, the first time you're interacting is something went wrong, you were notified, or you happen to notice it in the search results in Google, on caring.com, or any of these other players. So there's a tendency to want to delete negative comments, ignore them, take your time to respond, be very thoughtful, or when you do respond, you're very competitive, defensive, or worst yet, you do something called astroturfing, which is hiring third parties or posing as third parties to write positive reviews or criticize the negative reviews to deflect and misrepresent. When Google, Yelp, caring.com find this out, that those reviews are flagged and you are penalized, it can be extremely damaging. So play by the rules and do it the right way. These are all the ways not to do it. So let's talk a little bit about how to do it. So easier said than done, I get it. You have one angry caregiver that their mom or dad, you saw something or you heard something, and again, Yelp and others do not typically will flag or delete third-party experiences. So if you didn't experience it, they don't want you to write the review. It's only the people that have experienced it, which is really tough in senior living if you're not. My grandparents all ended up in senior care, assisted living for varying degrees of time, and I only saw them for little bits and starts because they lived in a different city. I'm not going to see much, right? So as a care provider, as the owner, you want to respond with positivity and understanding and empathy. And frankly, look at this, turn this upside down. So look at negative comments as an opportunity to highlight your strengths. One, you're being responsive and you care enough to respond, but to highlight, like, this is not a good example of, we apologize, etc. This is really our strength is in here, and here's what happened. Another thing to do is ask your loyal customers to write reviews for you, or generally, if you're a really strong brand, your residents and caregivers will go and actually defend you, and that helps. So the last bullet's important, and it's in quotes. The customer should always feel right. Doesn't mean they're always right, but they should feel at least appreciated and acknowledged. And this is so important. And it's so often that you get, really ridiculous reviews. So you can see down below, Root just did a 1-star with no comment. What are you supposed to do with that, right? So there are a lot of things that you can do, and we'll talk about that in a second. So there are a lot of ways to deal with negative reviews: responding promptly, being human, owning it. The more you lean into it and own it, the less likely they are to have a negative reaction. They want recognition, they want respect, they want resolution. So give them as much of that as you can. Correct any factual misstatements. Caring will flag or delete any incorrect, inaccurate statements on their listings. Other sites do the same thing. Highlight your strengths. Right, like a person, not a corporation. Take it offline as quickly as you can, resolve it, and then you should always post a recap of how you solved it, or ask that person, if they're in a good mood, to do that for you to bring closure. But don't bother people with your back and forth, because it can get ugly before it gets better. Restitution is always a good idea. I don't usually recommend my clients offer something off the bat until they see what the person wants, because there's no reason to offer a free month of care if all they really wanted was a phone call. And if you have loyal customers, happy customers, clients, residents, ask them to share their experiences and write reviews. It's also important to be consistent in a good way. I've seen in the solar space, a company kept using the same pat responses, canned responses for all. This is not who we are, and they kept saying it's the same error. They kept making the same mistakes. Different customers said the same thing about their level of service, and they said, that's not us, that's not how we operate, but it clearly was. So you got to own it and be consistent, and then understand how this stuff works to know what your rights are with flagging reviews, or reading reviews, or responding to reviews. So when I typically recommend fast tracking responses, if there's credibility to the reviewer, they're misstating facts, the sentiment is very impactful in a negative way. There are some sort of factual errors, as I mentioned, that could require flagging. And I will say these are somewhat repetitive to what you've seen in the best practices, but if there's a repetitive issue happening over and over, you need to address it publicly, but always acknowledge, own, and make good. And so you can see here upper right, I'm a friend of a residence. And then thank you for their response was, sorry I had this experience. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. I'd say that's like 20 to 50% of the problem solved, acknowledging it and saying we're working on fixing it, but there is no make good here. There's not a deeper apology. There's no contact information or way for this person to continue talking. So I don't think they've solved all of the problem. So it's really important to make sure that you show not just that person, but everybody else, that you're not afraid to solve problems and take care of your customers and their constituents. Being gracious and humble helps. Let them know you appreciate your business. So remember, it's important to say thank you to all those positive reviews. It's extremely powerful just to say thank you. And sometimes Yelp doesn't want me to say this, but rewarding people for positive reviews after the fact without them knowing there was an incentive, so it doesn't bias the outcome, I think is worth considering. But Yelp absolutely abhors any sort of rewards or incentives for reviews. So try to avoid that where possible. And then obviously they love to see that you know and that you care who they are. So one of the challenges is, how do I know that I am that there are negative reviews? Well, you should monitor Google My Business regularly. You can, just to look at reviews, you can use mention.net or socialmention.com to monitor for new reviews, positive and negative reviews. There are a bunch of different providers of paid management tools you can use. Any of these are worth testing. Some have free trials. They will notify you. They can set parameters. Oh, you have a 3-star review. Do you want to address that now? This is a screenshot of Social Mention. So you can see when you put in Laurelhurst Village, you can see all these different metrics on what's being mentioned around Laurelhurst Village. the sentiment, the strength and passion of those posts. And then with Hootsuite, you can kind of see, or Google Analytics, you can see quantity and quality of click-throughs and views of any of the content you're creating. So there are a lot of ways to measure your monitoring tools. So key takeaways before we go to Q&A. Claim and optimize your local listing, especially Google local/Google My Business, and any and all senior care directories. The third tier would be any business directories. And then optimize your website for search engines so that it ranks well for local search. The name, address, phone number on your website map to the local listings, and monitor and manage those reviews, knowing when to respond and when not to respond. Here are a few links that you can click through that are including a bunch of caring.com resources that talk more about each of these topics. And if we can move to Q&A now, and I'll leave my contact information.
Okay, great. And we did get quite a few questions here. So let me go ahead and go through them. Thank you so much for all that great information you shared with our attendees. Of course, we did get a question at the presentation afterwards. Yes, this will be emailed to everyone's inboxes first thing tomorrow. We have a question regarding the schema markup for you, Ken.
Yes.
The question is, how to know best practices around schema markup for agencies with multiple physical locations. Should all of the physical locations have their own pages? Should each be listed on the main organization's website in the footer or contact page? And how does having multiple locations impact citations? So that's a lot, but essentially what they're asking is, they're an organization with multiple locations. How do they manage that online presence in the best practice format using schema markup?
Okay, so I'll unpack this a little bit and also say that anybody here that if we don't get to and you have a question, you can email me, kent@anvilmedia.com, with any follow-up questions. So a couple things. One is no matter how many locations you have, if it's more than one, you should have a dedicated location page for each location that's linked through your contact page or your locations page. It's also okay, let's say between 2 and 30 locations, to have a scrolling list so that your locations page says, here is a listing of all our locations around Oregon, Washington, California, or whatever the case is. And then you have like a scrolling kind of Amazon shopping sort of scroll where there's the name, location, and a photo. And then when you click, it goes to a dedicated page that includes amenities, local mentions of local neighborhoods. So we do a lot of SEO for clients in the property management space, where each property has its own site, but then they have a master site that has a listing for each of those sites with a dedicated page as well. So that's one way to do it, but every location on its location page should use schema market to identify name, address, phone number for sure. And then the idea is that you've got one page of all the locations and scroll so it sees the relationships. Then each of the pages has schema markup, some photos, and other information. If you have fewer than 10 locations, you might still want to fit them in the footer, but generally I would not. I would have a link to the location page in the footer, and that should cover it. Old school SEO would be each one has, let's say they're all in different cities. You would say Phoenix, senior housing location, and Tucson, senior living housing, and those would link to the local pages. That's a little bit keyword loady, a little bit spammy. It may work, but you're better off optimizing the location page with all the relevant Phoenix related modifiers, etc. And then of course, schema for every location page as well.
Okay, great. We're having some questions around one of the examples you showed of search results, and the question is, how is it that someone with more reviews is showing lower in the search results than someone with a lower rating and more reviews higher up?
Yes.
And I would just want to, it's a great question. I just want to add just one little bit before you jump into about Google. On Caring, some of the directory search results, like for instance in our home care category, it is sorted by reviews. So in that case, those partner listings with the most reviews are going to show first. So how Google is organized is totally different, and then Kent will talk more about that.
Yeah, so it's worth noting that some sites allow you to search and sort, like Caring, but we'll talk about Google because that's the primary focus here. That's the big driver of traffic, the most searched, is that it is primarily based on the location of the searcher. So if most 90% or 95% of searches happen within the market, so when I'm searching for senior care, it's going to give me the 3 locations with very few exceptions that are simply closest to me. They may or may not be claimed. They may or may not have any reviews or a lot of positive reviews, but generally they're the 3 closest. And then I can always click on see more to get, then they'll sort primarily still by distance or proximity to me, but then also on some of the other ranking factors like categorization, quality and quantity of reviews, citations, structured markup, all those other those metrics. If I am out of market, it's going to go from the centroid, the center of the city. If I'm searching for Portland, it'll start in the middle of Portland and work its way out with the top 3. So you can either win by location, by being closest to downtown, which is only 5% of searches, 5 to 10%, or you can go by close to where anybody's searching. In that case, you're going to get people probably within 5 miles of you are the ones that are going to get where you're going to rank in the top 3.
And that's really great that you're emphasizing it's really going to depend on the person searching what the results are.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then there's a couple questions here about inaccurate information. So how does one get photos updated on those Google local pages, and what to do when search results has one set of data that's different than an actual listing?
That is a great question. So for starters, once you claim your listing, you can upload and edit photos. You can put in, not as common for senior care, but promotions and other plugs that talk about the benefits of your location. So that's easy. Once you claim, then you can update, your business hours, all of that, photos, etc. When it comes to inconsistencies, you can submit for corrections. You can merge listings. Often what happens is if there's a name change, it can be a problem. And this is much less common in senior care, but in the hospitality industry, we've changed hotels' names, we've moved brands, and it can be a big headache. Or when our regular sort of retail clients move, then you get multiple listings, and you often can permanently lose reviews. It's really painful. So you have to have a relationship with Google. And again, for an agency like us, we do have contacts and ways to get in to talk to humans. They've gotten much better on Google Local, Google My Business about actually picking up a phone and answering your questions. But the key is to understand whether or not, if it's just an inconsistency, it's all about going through the third parties like Yext, Bright Local, White Spark, UBL, and Moz to resubmit the proper name, address, phone number through their system to create that consistency. But usually you have to go to each one. Not every one will be wrong. Otherwise, you go to the main providers that own that data. But if you go direct, there's one error on Google that isn't everywhere else. Go direct to Google, and you can flag it as inconsistent information and work through it that way.
And there's a couple questions about can you add videos to business pages, and can the photos be similar to an ad?
So good question, and I'm 80% the expert versus my local SEO team. I don't believe that they favor ads, although you can upload a logo or what would be equivalent of your sign. But typically they like to see for senior care it would be exterior shot, interior shot, maybe a shot of your signage or of an actual logo. They don't like to see ads, so typically nothing with writing or text overlay like a text or display ad would be. So imagery without writing is the safest as far as I know. And then videos, not yet on Google My Business in particular. But I would highly, highly, highly recommend uploading not just images, but videos to each of your location pages so that it creates Two things. One is more engagement. We know that because do a whole separate presentation and curriculum on video marketing as the highest life form on the internet. It's 5 times more engaging than the written word, 2 to 3 times more engaging than images. So it's good marketing, it's better conversion rates, but also Google loves video. So the more multimedia you can put on your location pages, absolutely the greater opportunity for those pages to rank.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We had 2 questions about reviews. One is how, as a new business, to get started in reviews, and then what to do if you suspect a fake review.
Aha, I love these 2 questions. So first question is getting started. So it's not as hard as you think. You go through to the, I would go to Google My Business, Bing and Yahoo, and claim those listings directly. By phone number or postcard, build them out with photos, hours, name, address, phone number, all of it very consistent. And then once you've claimed those listings, there's a URL usually associated with it that you can send to people, your best customers and residents and caregivers, and say, please put a review up for us. My recommendation is to start with at least 5 reviews on each of the big platforms, including Caring and other senior care related sites, and then work your way backfill on the big ones like Caring and Google to try and get 10, 15 to 20. I would target 20 reviews for over time for all the major directories and industry senior care sites. So that might take a year, but make it an initiative that employees at all levels, when they identify a happy, delighted resident or caregiver, just remind them, send them a link. Remember, do not incentivize them, especially on the front end, but do thank them on the back end. And then secondarily, there's the beauty of the internet. If you remember back in 96 or 7, when I first started working in the web, there was a New Yorker comic strip, and it's a dog talking to another dog, and the dog talking is on the computer saying to the other dog sitting next to him, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. And that was kind of like for 10 years or 15 years, that was like the joke, like 50-year-old guys pretending to be 13-year-old girls and vice versa for whatever reason, right? It's the creepy part of chat rooms and social media that we still are worried about as parents. But the reality is this: in social media, you're only as credible as your history. So on social media, I know not only that you're a dog, I know what breed you are and how many puppies you have and all that, because if you want to be credible, you have to have a real handle and a history. You know, Yelp will pretty much throw out any single reviews. You know, you have to have a history with them, and similar with many sites. And so in order to do that, to create the credibility, to have the juice, as it were, you have to be authentic. If you write only bad reviews, at some point you're just going to be blacklisted. So, especially without any warrant or merit. So the idea is that it's easy to tell if the reviews are fake, because they have little history, little credibility, or they have a bizarre pattern. So we had somebody review my agency, a separate agency than Anvil, a couple of years ago. We had it flagged in Yelp, immediately removed it. I said, this isn't a customer, never was a customer. And we pointed out why it was a fake review, because they only wrote random negative reviews about certain businesses as if they were a plant. Like the other negative reviews about a gym. And it was a very odd review. So sometimes their algorithms don't catch it, and you'll see it, but it's fairly easy to flag reviews, but primarily dwell on the lack of accuracy, misstatements of fact, or it wasn't first person, wasn't authentic, or they had some other reason to do it. But most of the time it's your competitors hiring a shady marketing firm that poses to be customers, or your competitors doing it, posing to be customers, rather than real customers tend to be very easy to spot. Fake ones, likewise, fairly easy to spot.
That's great. And then I can add from the Caring.com platform perspective, for new businesses, if you are partnered with Caring.com, it comes with free review generation support services, including the referrals we make to your community or home care agency. We follow up and ask those individuals for reviews on your behalf. So, and I know other platforms have similar services. So any of you that are attending who are partnered with Caring.com, contact community@caring.com to take advantage of those free services that are available to you to generate reviews. On the fake review side of things with Caring, 80% of the reviews on our site are generated from people that we are helping find senior care resources. We are those are real consumers. So on the front end, they may mask their identity. We do allow them to be anonymous. But on the back end, we know exactly who they are. But if you do suspect it's a disgruntled employee or a competitor, just email community@caring.com. We're happy to investigate. At this time, unfortunately, we've run out of time for more questions. So those of you who asked about the presentation, we will be emailing that to you tomorrow. Those of you who asked for a repeat of those search rankings, it's included in the presentation you'll be getting tomorrow. And anyone else whose question we didn't get to, we will definitely follow up with you after the session. We've got a lot of great questions. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Kent, for all of the time you took to answer those questions. This is how you can reach Kent. Here's telephone number, his email. He's on LinkedIn and Twitter, as well as their website. The URL is right there. Again, you'll be getting that list of resources that he shared with you via email after this session. Our next session in September is going to focus on skilled nursing and helping skilled nursing facilities in particular optimize their online presence and improve their digital marketing to complement the other reputation and census building initiatives like state surveys. Judah Gutwein of SkyCare Media and Amy Osmond-Cook of the Association of Skilled Nursing Providers will be the featured speakers for that session. You will get an invite via email, but you can always visit our blog, partners.caring.com, where we have the entire webinar archive as well as all upcoming events. This session will be archived there. So if you lose the email, go to partners.caring.com and you will find the recording, the slides, and the companion blog post linked from there starting tomorrow. We really appreciate that you took time to attend this session today, and I cannot thank you enough, Kent Lewis of Anvil Media, for sharing your expertise and insights with us. This has been a really helpful session. And I hope others agree. After this session, you're going to be prompted to give us your feedback. What did you like most about the session? Is there anything we could have done better to help you further? So give us a rating on the session. Then we're going to ask you if you'd like to receive more information from Kent and his organization. So if you do, please answer yes to that question, and we will help introduce you to Kent. We look forward to hearing from you. Please do take the survey after the session. It will also be linked in a follow-up email you'll get later on. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and goodbye for now.